Okay, accessing system files. Our subject is glyphosate, a variable that's become, well, pervasive in our environment. Our mission? Analyze the threat and execute a full gut recovery protocol. Let's begin the analysis. So, let's get right to it. Your internal operating system, the trillions of microbes that basically run the show when it comes to your health, it's under a silent, constant assault. A threat has breached the firewall, and you know what? It's often delivered through the very processed foods we eat every day, especially those made with crops like wheat, corn, and soy. But what is this threat? It's not a virus or some new kind of bacteria. No, the source is a chemical, a catalyst for biological chaos, really. It's an herbicide called glyphosate. And yeah, it's designed to kill plants, but its biggest casualty might just be the incredibly delicate ecosystem living inside of you. Let's initiate a deep dive. All right, to really understand what we're up against and how to fight back, we're loading a 5-phase protocol. First, we'll identify the infiltrator. Then, we'll assess the damage. After that, we initiate a clean sweep, rebuild the whole biotic architecture, and finally, establish a long-term defense. Okay, phase 1, threat identification. We absolutely have to understand how this saboteur, glyphosate, manages to bypass our defenses and go straight for our most critical internal allies. So here's the core mechanism of the attack. Glyphosate works by blocking something called the shikimate pathway. Now, you can think of this pathway as a kind of biochemical factory that plants and, crucially, microbes use to build essential amino acids, the literal building blocks of life. Glyphosate just walks in and jams the machinery, specifically one key enzyme, and the entire factory just grinds to a halt. Now, this is where things get really fascinating and, frankly, a little concerning. This is the regulatory blind spot. For decades, the safety argument was super simple. Hey, human cells don't have this shikimate pathway, so glyphosate can't possibly harm us. But that argument completely, and I mean completely, ignores the fact that our gut microbes do have this pathway, and we are 100% dependent on them for our health. And just how big is this blind spot? Take a look at this number. Research from 2021 found that a staggering 54%, of our core essential gut species are susceptible to glyphosate. That's more than half of our internal allies being targeted. But wait, the threat doesn't stop there. The commercial formulas you see on the shelf aren't just pure glyphosate. Nope. They contain these undisclosed additives called coformulants. They're designed to help the herbicide penetrate plant cells better, but the data shows these additives can amplify the toxicity by up to 1,000 times. It makes the final product so much more damaging than the active ingredient by itself. So let's move on to phase 2 and see how this all snowballs into a massive, system-wide crisis. Because when you compromise over half of your core microbial species, well, that's not just a minor glitch. That's a full-on cascade failure. This creates what's called the pathogen advantage. You see, glyphosate acts like a selective bomb. It wipes out our sensitive, beneficial defenders, our good guys like Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium. This creates a biological void, like an empty lot. But many pathogens, like Clostridium, Salmonella, and even things like H. pylori, are resistant. They survive, and with all the competition suddenly gone, they just thrive, taking over the territory and shifting your entire internal ecosystem towards a state of disease. And the consequences of this microbial collapse? They're severe. Your gut barrier, your intestinal wall, starts to erode. This is what many people call leaky gut. And without the protective signals from our good bacteria, our cellular power plants, the mitochondria, they start to fail. The whole system just defaults to a state of chronic, systemic inflammation. Okay, so that's the damage report. Pretty grim. But now let's talk about the solution. Phase 3 is where we start the recovery protocol, and we begin with neutralizing the threat. We have to stop the assault before we can even think about rebuilding. So, the first order of business is simple. We initiate the clean sweep. I mean, it's common sense, right? You can't build a new house on a toxic foundation. You have to clear the lot first. The recovery protocol uses a really smart two-pronged attack. First up is sequestration. We use binders like zeolite or humic and fulvic acids. Just think of these as microscopic sponges or magnets that go through your gut, trap the glyphosate, and safely escort it out of your body. Step 2 is saturation. See, glyphosate is a molecular mimic. It looks a lot like the amino acid glycine. So by saturating your system with 3 to 5 grams of real glycine, you essentially crowd out the imposter, protecting your cells from accidentally using the wrong part. So, with a threat neutralized, we can finally move to phase 4, system restoration. And let me be clear, this is not just about taking a probiotic pill and calling it a day. This is about rebuilding an entire ecosystem from the ground up, a coordinated effort we call the biotic symphony. Every ecosystem, every garden needs good fertilizer. For your gut, that fertilizer is prebiotics. And these aren't just any old fibers. They are specialized fuels. For example, polyphenols from things like pomegranates specifically feed a crucial species called Akkermansia, which is absolutely essential for keeping your gut lining thick and healthy. Next, you bring in the workers, the probiotics. But again, we have to be strategic. We deploy spore-based snipers like bacillus strains because they're tough enough to survive your stomach acid and actually make it to the lower gut where they need to be. We also use a wide variety of fermented foods, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, to reseed those populations of power players like Lactobacillus reuteri and all the different strains of bifidobacterium that were wiped out. And finally, and this part is so key, we need the output of a healthy gut. We need postbiotics. These are the beneficial chemicals that our good bacteria produce for us. The most important one is probably a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. It's not just some byproduct, it's the direct fuel for our colon cells, and it's the primary signal that tells our mitochondria to repair themselves and reboot. All right, let's move into the final phase, fortification. Because a restored system is one thing, but a truly resilient, defended system, that's the real goal. This is all about long-term maintenance. So once you've cleared out the main toxin and started rebuilding, you still need to manage those opportunistic pathogens that took root in the chaos. This table shows some targeted natural antimicrobial strategies. Pomegranate extract, for instance, helps break down the defenses of pathogens. Meanwhile, things like caprylic acid are fantastic for specifically targeting fungal overgrowths like candida. It's about restoring balance, not just adding more good guys to the mix. So what's the most powerful intervention of all? It might be just changing your input. Check this out. A study showed that simply switching from a conventional diet to an all-organic diet slashed urinary glyphosate levels by over 70% in less than a week. You can dramatically lower your body's toxic burden just by changing what's on your plate. It's that powerful. And this is your long-term maintenance code. True resilience is built on these 4 non-negotiable system habits: getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep for gut-brain communication, using some form of intermittent fasting to trigger cellular cleanup, actively modulating stress to protect that gut barrier, and finally, aiming to eat over 30 different types of plants every single week to feed a truly diverse and powerful microbiome. And that's the protocol. System reboot is complete and successful. But listen, this isn't a one-time fix. Health is a state of active, constant defense. So the real question is, now that you have the code, now that you have the playbook, are you prepared to defend your system?